I launch into the details of constellation work, I want to give you just a little bit of a piece of information that you can use while we're doing the constellation, so you can understand what is part of the, how do I want to say, it's part of what goes on in me when I'm doing a constellation, okay? It also has a lot to do with the coaching model that I do for a living. I work with couples and single people around relationship stuff, and most of the time it goes back to early developmental trauma that I'm working with. So what we're going to talk about is, if you think of a spectrum of the unconscious versus the conscious, we have this memory system in our body called implicit memory. And the implicit memory system is designed to make things really super efficient. For example, playing an instrument. You don't want to, like, when you first start playing, it's difficult because you're trying to get a feel for the movement or whatever it is that your instrument you're playing. But over time, it becomes easier and easier because you repeat a certain sequence or repeat a certain pattern over and over again, right? Same with driving a car, riding a bike. So that's what we call the implicit memory system, where it becomes really efficient over time as you practice and practice. Well, the problem with that system is when we're tiny, it's the most volatile time in our life when we're really dependent on our parents, in particular the mom or the primary caretaker in the first 5 to 7 years of life. Well, the first 18 months is really essential because there's another part of our brain called the hippocampus that is not online yet. And the hippocampus is what date codes and timestamps information. So what that means is when an event happens and it gets date coded and timestamped, you can actually tell the story, right? You can say, oh, this happened when I was 5 or 6, we went to the lake and went fishing with my dad, da-da-da-da-da, right? Well, the problem is before 18 months, there is no record like that. It's just literally in your body as a memory system, okay? There's no sequence to it. So what that means is later on, whatever happened during that period of time, or even in the first 5 years, because the hippocampus really is not fully online until about age 5. That's when most people can remember, you know, a lot of the events that happened to them. So what happens is that memory system is actually mobilizing a lot of our beliefs, our choices, and our thoughts as we get older. So if they get triggered, if any aspect of an event gets triggered, for example, a real common one with couples is somebody ignoring the other person when they've made a request or they've asked for something. Like they don't respond, like there's a delay, a certain period of time delay, and that can trigger that nervous system to access that old memory that doesn't have a date code or a timestamp. So what happens is it starts playing out. That high activation in the body, the brain literally can't tell the difference between 30 or 40 years ago and right now, in that moment. That is the dilemma that we all have with this unconscious versus conscious, because as we grow older, those coping mechanisms we use to handle that really high stress in our bodies, it starts breaking down. We call it midlife crisis. Okay, and people hit it right around 35 to 38, and then it continues until like our 50s, and we'll either clamp down on it more, and we become more dysfunctional or rigid around our habits, or we start loosening the grip on those things, and we start learning new ways to be in our body. Okay, now for a lot of people that I've done trauma work with, it's really disconcerting because it's painful. I mean, all these memories just start come flooding out. Some people actually hit a point where they're in post-traumatic stress, which is so intense that they don't know what to do with it. So they actually need mental care, okay? So it's really debilitating, and it's at the root of most people's relationship issues. And that includes attracting ideal partners, partners that you're really compatible with, partners that you keep repeating the same, like you attract somebody that's the same pattern over and over again. Okay, they do distancing, you get anxious when they distance. You do distancing, they get anxious when you distance. Okay, and then all the behaviors ensue around that kind of a dynamic. Okay, is this making sense? So at the root of this unconscious piece, and I'm talking about people that have like challenges in the world around that, is insecurity. Okay, and we want to deal with that insecurity. We want to get to the root of it. And today what you're going to see is some ways I do that. Okay, not only with the people that are doing constellations, but also with representatives in the floor that are doing the work as representatives. You'll see how I repair that early imprint. Okay, does this make sense? Okay, so I think that's all I want to say about that. And it'll, as we do constellation work, it'll make more sense, okay, and you'll see it. Now, why do I talk about this? Well, one, I think it's really important for everybody to understand this, because when you know that your brain is literally triggered by a memory, it's easier to unplug it, because you can go, whoa, right there it is. I'm in it right now. I'm anxious. I'm fearful, whatever's going on. And then you can just start eliminating those coping patterns that get us into trouble, okay? All right.